This morning, a bridge in Pittsburgh collapsed. That is a disaster of its own. It also, in doing so, severed a gas line. We're gonna show you some footage as we go, but you should understand that 10 people had minor injuries, which I guess considering everything that has happened in this story is amazing that is the extent of it. I mean, you can see it looks like the end of the world. It looks like The Walking Dead. A bridge has collapsed. If it had collapsed at another time in the day when traffic was heavier, the toll could have been absolutely devastating. Still, property damage to cars, 10 people having injuries. That is really bad anyway. Now, the bridge has been listed as being in poor condition. Back in 2018, there was a photo, a tweet that went out of someone, stating that they had seen that some of these support structures had rusted through. So this is yet another. This is a piece of American infrastructure that we've known for some time needs to be fixed, needs to be replaced, but America doesn't generally prioritize infrastructure. And we'll talk about what's been done recently in just a bit. But here's some more details on the bridge located on Forbes Avenue near Frick Park. It came down around 6 a.m. It was 447 feet long, had a steel structure, and was finished back in 1970. It was listed by Pennsylvania's Department of Transportation as being in poor condition. Records show it graded the road deck and upper part of the structure at 4 out of 10, and the lower part at 6 out of 10. When the best you can manage is still an F, that's not good. When it's not a performance of Shakespeare in the Park. It's supposed to hold cars as they travel across an extended distance. So, but we allow it. We allow it for literally years, Brett.
6 out of 10 is a D-, John, and America's running around going, I passed. I passed. I got a D-. Technically, it wasn't a failure. When clearly it was a failure. People say we have crumbling infrastructure in America, and that's because we don't invest in it. And it's crazy that the distribution of wealth has gone to private individuals who don't even use their highly generous tax structure in terms of what they themselves are allowed to aggregate in terms of wealth to put it back into the very distribution methods that keep their fortunes coming and flowing, because no one wants to pay for it. No one wants to invest in anything like this. And the only time they do is they say, "Oh, I want you to privatize this road so that I can collect tolls, so I can maintain it." It's all a grift. This is the bare minimum. That's my point. This is the bare minimum. Roads and bridges. When you ask people what their local politicians should do, it's like fill the potholes, make sure the trains run, like the water is clean. I'm protected from fire and crime. Even Republicans say that stuff. Stay out of my life as much as possible. Make sure the bridge doesn't crumble beneath my car, and they fail.
Yeah. They seem to be fine with the water being bad in general, but yeah, at least in their area, they want to have those minimal things. That is, of course, just a minimum. We advocate for far more than that. We believe that the government does have an obligation to do far more than that, but not having bridges that people can have faith in is devastating. And in response to this happening this morning, I saw people sharing on Twitter other instances of like chunks falling off of other bridges and like bits of buildings falling off and crashing into cars. Like, again, we've used the term crumbling infrastructure for a very long time. It's generally used as a metaphor. It's also literally true. Now, in this particular case, Joe Biden, the president, was going to visit Pittsburgh later on today. We will see what ends up happening in terms of that visit, but it does put the focus back on infrastructure. Now, let's give you a little bit of commentary from Ed Gainey, mayor of Pittsburgh, said, right now we're still assessing the situation and getting information, but the good thing at this point, there are no fatalities. And we have a bit more. Here is some of the mayor talking about the Biden.
This bridge collapse happened on the day that the president is headed here to talk about infrastructure. I mean, what does that say about some of the improvements that need to be done?
We need it. I said it before. This bipartisan infrastructure law is critical to Southwest Pennsylvania and the city of Pittsburgh. We know we have bridges that we need to take care of. We're finding out now when the last inspection was and everything. But with him coming today to talk about this infrastructure bill, to discuss why this funding is so important, today is significant of that. You know, at the end of the day, we could have had some serious injuries.
And it was just 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, that we had Route 30 collapse just a couple of years ago. So another major artery. So
at the end of the day, this is critical that we get this funding. And we're glad to have the president coming today.
Yes, and look, so let's talk briefly about infrastructure. Finally, after 4 years of Infrastructure Week being exclusively a joke under Donald Trump, and he could have passed an infrastructure bill. They had majorities in the Senate and the House. He said he was going to build stuff. They built a bit of wall, and that's pretty much where it stopped. Finally, we got the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is not nearly as big. It's not up to the task monetarily to fix all of the infrastructure problems that the US has, let alone going any broader than the most explicit definition of hard infrastructure, generally slanted towards the sort of privatization that Brett was talking about earlier. That passed, and that sort of money will help in a lot of cases like this, redoing bridges and those sorts of things. But it only goes so far, and we could have had far more. We were continually strung along, first by them seeming to abide by this. We're only gonna do one if we do the other thing, and then, well, don't worry, okay, it may not have passed, and you no longer have the leverage that you did, but we're gonna bring it up, and then that didn't happen, didn't work. Now they're gonna strip out individual parts and try to pass them, and they've yet to provide us with any explanation why literally any of that would make it past an automatic filibuster from the Republicans. So there will be some help coming to communities across America from the infrastructure bill that they did pass. We could have done far more. We had, I think, an ethical, moral obligation to do far more, but it doesn't look like it's gonna happen at this point.
And Brooke, my wife, said that when you mentioned Shakespeare in the Park, it was a challenge to me to cite some opening monologue bits from Othello. So I'll say this: when billionaires trick the taxpayer into footing the bill for privatizing roads and bridges, thus do they ever make their fools their purse. And we are being led about by the nose as asses are. There you go. There's your Othello quotes.
To the billionaires and to the moderate Democrats, I bite my thumb at thee.
That's Romeo and Juliet. Here's an Othello one. To all the people who try to come after us, I will take by the throat the circumcised dog and smite him thus. There you go.
Okay, I did not claim to be doing Othello. I'm not a Shakespeare expert. Anyway.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.